Hey there, and welcome back to another episode of Echoes of the Past, the series where we dive into the histories of long-forgotten worlds. In this episode, we're going to discuss the infamous Element 115, also known as Divinium. Element 115 represents the fabric of reality itself, the ether, and its corruptive abilities were dangerous to the stability of time and the multiverse itself, causing tears, paradoxes, temporal loops, and all sorts of problems across multiple realities. Its creation was joint with the dimension known as Agartha. The bright blue sun hovered within the planet, but when a group of keepers, along with the Shadow Man, discovered the dark ether, they became corrupted by its influence, beginning a war between the pure and the corrupted. The war resulted in the Keepers' favor, leading to the banishment of the corrupted Keepers and the Shadow Man, but before their banishment they enacted two last-ditch efforts, one being the creation of the MPD, hidden away on Earth's moon, and another was dragging the blue sun into the dark ether with them. One of the earliest known discoveries of Element 115 was in the late 1800s in a town known as Purgatory Point. The town's local mine was said to contain an ore that if you stared into it long enough, could see the devil staring back. One of the miners, Clive Farnsworth, had been in the mines for the past 10 days. He'd be presumed dead, and I suppose they weren't far off, because when Clive finally did return, his flesh was rotting and his hollow eyes glowed. He ran wildly, attacking the mother of Jebediah Brown, the town's blacksmith. Another citizen named Old Bill gunned down Clive. Jebediah's mother succumbed to her wounds soon after. Deciding to investigate the mysterious blue ore, Jebediah ventured down into the mines not too long after his mother's passing. He believed he was only down there for a couple of hours, but upon his return he learned he was in fact absent for 5 days. The same night of his return, he was visited by what he perceived as two angels, who instructed him to construct devices known as the Agarthan device, and what would eventually be known as the Pack-a-Punch. When the angels came to visit Jebediah once more, they had asked him to place the Agarthan device's metal canister, otherwise known as the Seal of Duality, into the Pack-a-Punch. Upon its insertion, a blinding white light engulfed the town, and when his vision returned to normal, he found himself and the entire town buried beneath the ground, the undead tearing apart any who survived. Jebediah cupped his hands together and prayed to the angels for an answer, but all he was given was the screams of the damned as they tore down his door. Another known instance of Element 115 piercing through reality was in 1908, the first time since the Great War. A meteor containing 115 came crashing down in the Tunguska River, and in 1931 Dr. Ludwig Maxis was sent to investigate it. Upon this discovery, he dubbed the ore as Element 115, and soon after founded Group 935. The organization was to use this new element to improve the human condition. To say the least, they did the opposite. Other countries also uncovered the element. The United States found some near Groom Lake, and Japan found one in Okinawa, soon after forming Division 9. America's discovery would eventually lead to the creation of Broken Arrow. These three major organizations, plus Russia's Ascension Group, would experiment and toy with Element 115 for decades across all realities. This constant tampering with the element tore away at the multiverse's stability, just as the Apothecons had hoped it would. Jumping forward a bit, as part of Dr. Monty's plan to restore the multiverse back to its original stable self, Primus was instructed to collect souls from innocent variants of themselves. When their job was completed, they ventured to Agartha, summoning key in hand. All was well until Dr. Maxis was awoken by a mysterious voice emanating from the basement. Deciding to investigate, he discovered the source of the voice was from the summoning key, and upon placing his hand near it, it would magnetize into his grip. Maxis was transported into the summoning key, and the Shadow Man would replace him, finally breaking free. With the key, the Shadow Man tore open a gateway into the dark ether and transporting fragments of the house and other familiar locations within. Above them was the Apothecon sun. With one last fight ahead of them, Primus, with the help of Sophia, destroys the Shadow Man. Maxis, as the summoning key, along with Sophia, fly into the Apothecon sun, causing it to implode, dragging in the Apothecons and ultimately destroying them. This implosion is what caused the spread of Element 115 across the multiverse. Primus's actions, though noble, were the source of the multiverse's suffering. In the Broken Cycle timeline, Primus did not venture to Stalingrad or the house after the collection of Takio's soul. After their unique trip to Alcatraz, Primus recruited Ultimus and eventually awakened Victus from their cryochambers in order to finish the construction of the Agarthan device. But when Victus finished the construction of the Agarthan device and sent it to Primus and Ultimus, Primus Nikolai would use it to banish the multiverse into the dark ether, and through the banishment was the complete destruction of Element 115. Or so we thought. In Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3's Season 2 Reloaded Act mission, you can find 3 surviving fragments of Element 115. Now, it's more than likely this is just a reference and nothing more. I wouldn't consider this as its grand return or a hint for something larger. Upon interacting with the 3 meteors, the instrumental version of 115 will play. You may have noticed the orange coloring and thought, but I thought Element 115 was blue. And you're right. Well, but also wrong. In the early days of the Ether storyline, Element 115's color was actually orange, but when the map Origins came out and Jason Blundell took over as lead, they changed to blue. And in the same map, there's also a green variant, though that's also for a music Easter egg, and they behave no differently than their blue cousins, presumably. In the Dark Ether storyline, Ethereum acts as our new Element 115. However, they are not one and the same. Ethereum has its own unique properties, but they do have their similarities. Perhaps they're also just distant cousins. As I mentioned before, Element 115 had the ability to mess with time and reality, as well as become a power source for many machines, such as power generators, Perca-Colas, the Pack-a-Punch, wonder weapons, and so on. It could be converted into a form of electricity, or liquid, or even gas. While the gaseous form appears to create a docile form of zombie, as heard in one of Classify's radios, and Element 115 can also cause gravity distortions as seen in Der Eisendrache and Der Schatten, but another side effect that it can cause is memory loss and necrotization. Several people who have been exposed to the element begin to lose themselves, descending into insanity, forgetting their memories, or devolving into stereotypes of their former selves. Some examples I can give you are Cornelius Purnell, whose overexposure to Element 115 and the Elemental Shard caused him to become hungry for power, yearning to reach Agartha, his sanity slipping away along with his humanity. Russman. Similar to Purnell in being overexposed to 115 in the Shard, Russman completely lost himself, losing most of his memories or sometimes reliving them and forgetting his current whereabouts, forever scarred by 115's effects. And then finally, the Ultimus crew. Tank Dempsey, Nikolai Belinsky, and Takeo Masaki became stereotypes of their nations, all thanks to Dr. Richtofen, who pumped them full of 115 and were forced through horrific experiments, breaking them completely, becoming the loudmouth patriot, vodka-hooked Russian, and the honor-bound samurai. Although for some, it simply caused them to become infected and turn into another zombie. Some gain unique abilities, such as the astronauts warped to the moon by Dr. Schuster, who steal perks before teleporting you elsewhere, while others maintain the ability to speak, like George A. Romero in Call of the Dead. What decides why some who turn get to gain unique abilities or speech isn't really known, and perhaps it's just a form of resistance, or a higher being meddling with them to push the narrative. Now, before we wrap things up, let's also discuss another relative to Element 115, the Elemental Shard. There's going to be a bit of repetition when it comes to the finale, so bear with me. As I mentioned prior, when the two angels descended upon Jebediah Brown within his dreams, asking him to construct the Agarthan device, one of the required components was the Elemental Shard. But in order to create it, one needs to fuse 4 souls within a piece of Element 115, and Jebediah had no means to siphon 4 souls, leaving the device unfinished. But in 1945, Dr. Edward Richtofen would come to learn of the Agarthan device and its needed pieces, and unlike Jebediah before him, Richtofen had the perfect candidates for the creation of the Elemental Shard. After enduring unknown amounts of torture and experiments, Richtofen's test subjects, Nikolai Belinsky, Takeo Masaki, and the recently acquired Tank Dempsey, had their souls removed and inserted within a lone fragment of 115. However, due to the death of his other test subject, Pablo Marinus, he was 1 soul short, causing him to willingly sacrifice his own soul to complete the creation. The rock glowed and began to blossom and grow. The Elemental Shard had finally been created. From this moment onward, Edward Richtofen, Tank Dempsey, Takeo Masaki, and Nikolai Belinsky were bound as one across all timelines, destined to meet, their fates interlinked, and forever the fabric of reality itself. Should they meet their ends, then the very multiverse itself will collapse. This unique crystal was basically a purified Element 115. It gained abilities of its own, like providing souls to those who don't have any, such as the ADAM units in Alpha Omega. It led to the creation of the Bios, who became unkillable creatures forever fated to rise back up should they be shot down, and it could even resurrect the dead, without worry of zombification, such as with Peter McCain, who was granted a second chance at life thanks to Broken Arrow. And now, its final destination was its intended purpose from the very start, to be linked with the Agarthan device. Victus was given the Elemental Shard to assist the once-thought-dead Pablo Marinus in constructing the device, finally having all the required components. When the device was completed, it was sent to Primus Nikolai, who used it to create a new universe, one that would be untainted from the Cycle, Dr. Monty, the Apothecons, Group 935, and themselves. Anyway, that's basically everything about Element 115 and the Elemental Shard. Thank you, as always, for watching. It means a lot to me, and I apologize for the delay. But if you did enjoy, then please like, and if you're new and find yourself coming back for more, then consider subscribing. There will be plenty more videos like this in the future. Oh, and Frank Woods' tattoo had 115 on it, and BO1, BO2, and BO4, but in Black Ops Cold War, it's no longer there because 115 doesn't exist anymore. Okay, bye!